Blog Talk Radio.
Paranormal Review Radio.
Hello and welcome everyone. It is Friday night and you're listening to Paranormal Review Radio, the only radio show without commercials and with more great paranormal talk. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Anthony Agati in New York.
And I'm Lucy Liebfried in Chicago. You are listening to one of the highest rated paranormal radio shows on Blog Talk. No bull, no lies, just a true platform for everyone to share their knowledge and experiences. When searching for the truth, good communication is key. Now, our phone lines are open for questions or stories. The call-in number is 661-244-9831. Our chat room is also open, so you can type in your questions or comments as well. Don't forget to like us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Paranormal Review Radio. You'll find more articles, blogs, and full show uploads. And if you have specific questions, comments, or would like to be a guest on the show, email us at paranormal.review@aol.com. Now, sit back, get comfy, and prepare to open your minds. It's time for Paranormal Review Radio.
Whether you know it or not, Muslims have made an impact on the evolution of American society. Historically, Muslims have made major contribution within humanities, the sciences, and art. They explored North America 300 years before the so-called discovery of the New World by Christopher Columbus. But like with everything else, these claims and the claims like it have been debated and condemned in recent years. Islamophobia? Maybe. Lacking knowledge? I would say so. Everywhere you turn, the Muslim religion has come under heated scrutiny lately and has been the focus of many political enthusiasts as well as the news media. Have we truly understood the Islamic faith and the people that live it? I'm not sure we have. You're probably saying, what does that have to do with the paranormal? Well, truthfully, nothing. But when you introduce the Muslim faith with the paranormal, many people are not sure what to expect or understand for that matter. That's where we come in. Tonight we hope to introduce a fascinating woman who, if we were to list her gifts, would include writer, author, multimedia artist, speaker, global citizen, and paranormal investigator. I'm talking about none other than the wonderful Deonna Kelli Sayed. Her work is included in the forthcoming anthology, I Speak for Myself, Faithfully Feminist, which is due out this summer of 2015. Her essays have also appeared in the New York Times featured anthology, Love, Inshallah, The Secret Love Lives of American Muslim Women, as well as Foreign Policy in Focus, Dawn in Pakistan, Women This Month, Bahrain, Fact Magazine, Bahrain, altmuslimah.com, loveinshallah.com, and Muslimah Media Watch. Deonna also produces an author interview podcast series for loveinshallah.com. She has appeared as a guest on National Public Radio's Tell Me More, Coast to Coast AM, WNC's The State of Things, and Jeff Belanger's 30-Odd Minutes. Deonna has lectured to academic and general audiences on topics ranging from Islam to cultural studies. She is the author of Paranormal Obsession, America's Fascination with Ghosts and Hauntings, Spooks and Spirits, and So You Wanna Hunt Ghosts, a down-to-earth guide. Deonna was recently awarded a North Carolina Regional Artist Project grant for her memoir In Progress. If that doesn't impress you, then this will. Deonna is with us tonight on our show. Please help me in giving me a warm welcome for Deonna Kelli Sayed. Hi, Deonna. Thanks for coming on the show tonight. Happy to have you.
Thank you. That is the most generous introduction anyone has ever given me, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, I read your book, Paranormal Obsession, a while ago, and I've talked about this with Lucy many years ago, a few years back, and I said, I really want to talk to Deonna. I really, really want to talk to her. And it's just been on the shelf, and just recently your name popped up, and I said, that's it, Lucy, we have to have her on the show again. So thank you for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I haven't done this in a while, so this is quite a special moment.
Well, hello, Deonna. It is so nice to have you here with us. And I know you've hung up the paranormal hat for a while now, but in my opinion, once a paranormal nut, always a paranormal nut. So I've heard that you say generally who you are today has been paved by the paranormal. Can you explain how you began to be a writer and how you got involved in the paranormal?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, I was just talking to someone tonight that this aspect of myself, the paranormal investigation, was a huge paradigm shift for me in terms of my identity. And I think it's true for anyone who gets involved with it. It literally changes the boundaries of your world, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does.
And for me, I mean, as everyone knows, because of this wonderful introduction that you gave me, I am a Muslim. I've been Muslim for 20 years. And the journey to paranormal research really gave me the tools not only to reassess my faith and how I felt about my faith, but also how I viewed the world cosmically. And it was a transformative experience intellectually and creatively. And I think for many people who get involved in this, that's exactly what this research is supposed to do. It's supposed to transform you into, I think, a better person.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I've been reading your blogs on, I believe it's called Pathos, and they have given me insight into Muslim life that I haven't had before. You were born in the South, so how does a white Southern woman find her way to Islam?
Well, that has a lot to do with exceptional experiences, just having very deeply spiritual experiences, and a lot of it is intuitively seeking the unseen, and whatever that may mean to you. I think we all have different ideas of what that is, right? But many of us are intuitively seeking the unseen, whether it's a spiritual conceptualization or a scientific conceptualization, but somehow we might recognize that we're not necessarily complete people without engaging this unseen element. And what I write about in Paranormal Obsession is for so many of us who go into ghost hunting, in particular, that's what I did. We are seeking to answer questions about who we are and our place in the world. We are seeking to find some sort of metaphysical sense in the wonderment of being in the world. And I hope I'm making sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh no, you are. Well, you know what? One thing I did want to ask you, there seems to be a lot of misinformation on a woman's life within Islam, and to me, to be a very male-dominated way. But yet, here you are. You're a woman who's a writer and a paranormal investigator. Have you had any kind of roadblocks with what you do?
You know, really, I haven't. I really haven't. I think I was married at the time when I started paranormal investigation, and I think my husband or my ex-husband didn't quite understand it, but he certainly accepted it. And the way that I always talked about it with other Muslims, one, Muslims do have to accept the unseen. Muslims do believe in something called the Jinn, which we can talk about a little bit later. But also part of being Muslim is you have to approach the world with inquiry. You have to ask questions. You have to engage the world critically. And part of paranormal investigation was really seeking out the mechanics of how the world works in a lot of ways. And that was part of my faith process to a degree. I mean, I understand everyone comes into the paranormal with different objectives and a different agenda, and that's okay. And that's one thing that makes paranormal research so amazing, is that we can all have very different philosophies and come together and be really cool with it, most of the time. And for me, it was an investigation into not only cultural identity, but also just like, wow, there's so much we don't know about the world, and there's still so much magic out there.
Well, we obviously want to talk about your influence and your experiences within the paranormal as being a Muslim woman of the faith. And so to sort of understand that a little bit, I really wanted to sort of get into Islam and Muslim a little bit, just so that people sort of understand what it's about. And coming from you, I think it may help a little bit. And so one of the questions that I thought of, and I think is probably on the minds of a lot of people, again, as we're talking about misunderstandings and people sort of hearing things on the news and, hearing jib-jabs of stuff that they sort of mesh together and make their own truth out of. But being a Muslim American woman, what is your opinion on the ISIS atrocities and even the many Americans who are fleeing the States to join their movement?
Well, there's not as many Americans fleeing the States as certain media outlets would like you to believe, but ISIS is a very painful thing for most Muslims because it's such an atrocity. It's so hard to believe that people could just dismiss their humanity to do so many horrible things. And, most of the victims of ISIS are other Muslims. So right. Muslims are suffering tremendously at the hands of this. And recently I was talking to a group of friends of mine. We don't see Islam in this at all. What we see is fascism. And fascism comes in many different shades and in many different types of clothing. And this is really, in a lot of ways, to me, it's a fascist movement. And I can't see Islam in it at all. But for Muslims, it's a very painful thing to see, deeply painful.
Do you feel as though sort of ISIS is creating a blanket over the religion itself and sort of, I guess, getting people's mindset into the belief that this is the faith and giving them a misinterpretation of what it's all about?
Well, they certainly seem to be the embodiment of every type of horrible stereotype one could possibly have about Muslims, almost to the point of it being some sort of absurd satire. In that sense, it's, every horrible thing anyone has ever thought about a Muslim, it's embodied in ISIS. And I think that's where it is such a nightmare for people. And there, you could get into the political and cultural ramifications and the trajectories that have created ISIS. That's a whole different type of show, but it's something that even Muslims can't quite grasp. And one thing that ISIS is doing is actually unifying Muslims. Finally, Muslims now can unify around this concept called ISIS.
I may get a little deep and controversial with this question, but I think it's necessary. I think it's necessary, and if I'm putting you on the spot, please tell me. But I find it so ironic that many people are defending their Christian religion by saying that they're nothing like what Islam extremists are doing and never dealt with any of this, but they forget about the Crusades and the Inquisitions that actually outnumbered, from what I've read, that have sort of outnumbered the body counts that we see unfolding with ISIS. In your experience, do you think society as a whole will possibly learn something from all of this chaos in the world, or do you think that it will soon become sort of like an all-out destruction of humanity?
Well, I would like to. I try not to think about apocalypse. I mean, I try not to go in that direction. But somebody pointed out to me that apocalypse actually means rebirth, I think. And maybe society and maybe civilizations have gone through self-destructive modes and constant rebirths. Maybe that's the cycle. Maybe we all need these type of horrors in order to bring in forth a paradigm shift.
Well,
there has to be some good.
Right. They always say you always should try and bring a positive out of a negative. And, my hope is that, with everything that's going on in the world, to first, I guess, educate yourself and get knowledgeable about what it is. And so that was sort of like the backbone of our show tonight is learning more about Muslim and the Islamic faith and understanding what it really is, and then connecting that with the paranormal. Mm-hmm. But I think sort of, getting the positive out of things, and what maybe possibly could be learned today could, project everybody in the future to understand the world as a whole that much greater.
I would hope so, but it seems like humans, if anything, we're just incredibly gifted in making the same mistakes over and over again. Correct? We never almost
cyclical. Yeah.
Exactly. We never seem to quite get it. We're just people are just a series of little disasters, but I guess how you manage your disasters is what makes the big difference. And this goes back. I'm going to link this back up to the paranormal. I think we're at a point in human history, or at least at a point in the cycle, where people are seeking something deeply spiritual outside of the traditional institutions of religion. And that is very true for Muslims. It's true for people who don't identify with any particular faith. People are sort of looking beyond the rules and the regulations to find something deeply meaningful. And I have found many people of many different faiths use the paranormal for that. And I'm certainly no exception. And maybe when the world is so chaotic and so horrific, like 9/11 shook America to our core because it was something we thought could never happen to us. And in my book, Paranormal Obsession, I discussed that part of the influx or the renewed interest in the paranormal was because we were trying to make sense of this hugely horrifying cultural event that happened to us. And if you look throughout modern American history, or even go back further into Europe, the rise of paranormal interest, or interest in ghosts in particular, has always been associated with times of great cultural change or cultural trauma. You look at the Civil War and the rise of spiritualism, and then World War I and World War II, and then you had 9/11. And as I write in my book, there was interest in paranormal reality TV in America before 9/11, but after that event, a lot of entertainment producers sort of stepped back because they said, this is not the time to talk about ghosts in American society. But about a year after that, they started revisiting the concept. And I think it really became a healing mechanism for a lot of people in America, because so many of American men and women were now abroad in the military, and our world had just changed. And what better way to make sense of this is to go back and revisit our dead and our histories and our little histories, and allow these things to now speak back to us and tell us new stories.
Well, Deanna, forgive me for being ignorant in defining Islam, okay? But I did want to ask you, I read that Islam refers to a state of mind whereby one strives to live in complete devotion to God. Yes. How does this affect your daily life here in the United States? I mean, how different was it living in the Middle East than it is here?
Well, in the Middle East, you have your call to prayers blasted from all the mosques, 5 times a day. So there's no excuse not to pray. And you're in an environment which at one level does make it very easy to practice the rituals of Islam. But the whole world is a place for worship, the whole entire earth. So that you don't have to have these things in place to be in remembrance of the divine. Here I have found when I'm outside of the Muslim world, I have found myself to become more spiritual and to engage more constantly in that type of remembrance, because I don't have these call to prayers blasting 5 times a day from a loudspeaker. So you have to create a more internal space to understand who you are in the world.
Okay. Well, we sort of wanted to get behind all the myths and misconceptions being a Muslim and the Islamic faith before we get into the paranormal. I mean, it kind of helps to understand the religion and how it weaves, into the paranormal beliefs. So, as I understand, and as you kind of mentioned a little bit, Islam does not have a belief in ghosts. There are jinns in the world which are different from ghosts or spirits. Is this your belief? Yes. And can you kind of explain what a jinn is?
Yeah, first let me explain the jinn. The jinn are considered to be just a creation, a normal creation like you or I, but they are interdimensional beings. And I'm using, there are various definitions of jinn, but the Quran mentions jinn as beings who have free will. Now, some Muslims will accept that literally. Some Muslims may not accept the idea of the jinn, and some others may say, well, it could just be like viruses. We can't see a virus, but we know it exists. But it's not really this like weird figure moving in between dimensions. But it's pretty standard that most Muslims will accept the jinn are beings that can come and go in and out of our realm, and they have free will, so they can choose to be any faith they want, whereas angels, and Muslims also believe in angels, do not have free will because they're agents of God. That's sort of Muslim cosmology in a very simplified nutshell. Many Muslims believe that if a jinn chooses to come into the realm of humans, that it's a mischievous jinn, it's up to no good. And people do believe you can be possessed by jinn. There's a cottage industry throughout the Muslim world, exorcism, getting the jinn out. Jinn can fall in love with people, and some people say they can even, have mated with people in the past. I don't really know about that. So they're real beings, and they have real currency in the Muslim world. People will often put up Quranic sayings over the doors of their home to keep the jinn out. Or if something strange happens, if something paranormal happens, they'll say, oh, that's the jinn. Now, in my experience, I do believe in the jinn, but I also believe in the phenomena of consciousness surviving outside of the body, which is what I would call a ghost. I mean, a ghost is kind of a blanket term for lots of different events, right? But right. I do believe in the concept of consciousness in sentient consciousness, a disembodied sentient consciousness, which would probably be what we call an intelligent haunt. And Islamically, even though a lot of the scholars would say they don't believe in ghosts because their reference would be the Hollywood movie version of a ghost, but in Islam you do have the intellect and you have the soul, and you do have an equivalent to the concept of consciousness. I hope that answers the question in a very broad way.
It does, and it actually brings up a lot more questions.
Yeah.
My journey is in the paranormal is sort of a little bit different than from what I've encountered a lot of other folks, and so I tend to question my own religion, and sometimes even sort of put my religion to the side when I'm doing either paranormal research or investigating, just so that I can sort of see things that are not biased. I won't take it as though it's an angel or a demon, or I'm not even sure what it is, and so I just take it at that. When you were investigating and when you were heavily in paranormal, did you have that sort of same mindset, or was the faith, was being Muslim sort of the foundation and the basis for your belief in the paranormal?
I actually gained a new appreciation for Islam once I started going into the paranormal. But when I went out as an investigator, of course, that informed how I view things. But I was able to not let it necessarily influence me, especially when you're going into a client's home and people who obviously will have a very different faith than I do. I always met them at their level because it's not about me at that point. It's about them and their experiences. So, yes, like you, I was able to be both inside and outside, separate my faith from what was happening at the time, but also when I chose to, I could filter it through that. For one thing in the Quran, it says that God, and Muslims believe in the same God as Christians and Jews. It's a monotheistic God. A lot of the same stories that's in the Bible, the Torah, are in the Quran. But it says in Islam, it says God is the ruler of the universes. And Arabic is such a specific language, and that's a plural. The universes, it clearly states that there are different dimensions. It talks about the seven heavens, which is a metaphor for something beyond our realm. And it also, to be a Muslim, you have to believe in the unseen. You have to believe in things that you can't see, that exist, that have currency. And in Christianity, how would you hear that from the pulpit? I mean, Muslims don't have a problem with the concept of aliens because they understand that there's other things out there. I mean, the idea of aliens may be expressed a little bit differently. They may not have the same sort of MUFON conceptuality, but the idea of aliens, of course there are aliens. Of course there's other life forms out there. I mean, that's kind of it's just part of God's creation. So, but you would never, I'm not saying Muslims are consumed by this idea, but it's there. Of course, there's other realms. It's accepted. So, but would you hear that from a pulpit, from a Christian pulpit? Because you have these discussions, these theological discussions in Christianity today about this.
Well, you probably may have answered this question before when you were talking about consciousness, but most religions, if I am correct in saying this, that technically they sort of teach that there really isn't an afterlife, whereas the soul or the spirit can come down and speak to the living, that you do go, you possibly go somewhere else, either it's heaven or wherever, but there's no interaction with the living itself. And I think specifically within Christianity, if you are speaking to someone, if a living person is speaking to something that is of another realm, then it is demonic in nature or evil in nature. Or within, I believe, in Islam, then you are interacting or somehow communicating with the jinns. Then if that is the case, then is all the work that everyone is doing within the paranormal sort of being wasted in itself? I mean, all the evidence that we've captured and all the experiences, is it really nothing at all, or is it something that we need to, I guess, or are we learning something higher than what we're seeing at face value?
I have a friend who's a college professor, and I asked him once, he's a paranormal investigator, I said, do you believe in ghosts? And his answer, I think, really sums it up. He said, I don't know if what we're dealing with really are ghosts, but the data suggests that something anomalous is occurring, something that we can't quite explain within the current realm of scientific discourse. And I do agree with that. I'll tell you what I personally believe, informed by my Islam, that there are things that we don't quite understand, that there could be the jinn. I believe there's good and negative energy and good and negative frequencies. There's probably some quantum mechanic elements occurring here, that time and space, that time itself may be parallel. The past, present, and future are parallel dimensions, and sometimes we have bleed through. I do think that the data that paranormal investigators and the experiences we're having are very important, but we just don't have a foundation to put them in a context currently to serve greater humanity.
You've written an excellent book called on the paranormal, and it's called Paranormal Obsession, Americans' Fascination with Ghosts and Haunting, Spooks and Spirits. This book was published in 2011. Now, since that book was written, have you seen a change in how the paranormal is viewed?
I have. I think I've seen a change in the paranormal community where when I came into the community, there was still this excitement and this fascination about research and going out and helping clients and and doing the work, whatever the work may mean to you. Like John Zaffis, the work is deeply spiritual, and for other people, the work is helping, empowering clients. For others, it's scientific. I think there's been a shift now from the enthusiasm of the research to a cult of personality, where people are just wanting to be seen and to be known and to have some sort of identity and to be able to speak at conferences without having any real deep knowledge of the field and the history and the research. And I think it's now become very much invested in being a figure, some sort of public figure. And on one hand, that's a little bit disturbing if you're involved in the research and you care about the research. On the other hand, this is part of it. This is part, people involved in the paranormal or in spiritualism have always enjoyed a degree of celebrity. Through spiritualism, through even the priests, the shamans, they've always had that kind of role in American society or in any society.
Right.
So we can be critical of it, but it's just the way it is. It's just a pattern. So maybe we should just enjoy it. I know, as annoying as it is, as much drama as it creates, this really is nothing new. This cult of personality and cult of celebrity is nothing new when it comes to these topics.
Right.
I'm laughing, Deanna, because this sounds like so many conversations we've already had.
I know. I write in my book, one reason people get so protective and so invested in this is because we are dealing with cultural goods, right? We're dealing with belief systems. We're dealing with exceptional experiences. Honestly, the things that we go out and experience on investigation, and I believe people are truly having amazing, real things happen, real observable phenomena happening, that it's a gift because most people don't get to do this. Like most people in their daily lives aren't going to have these type of experiences. So I think we feel somehow privileged in our place in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're having amazing insights that most people don't get to have with such frequency. So we start to feel very protective over this sort of special knowledge that we're getting. So we are dealing with cultural goods, with very valuable cultural goods, I think.
Okay. With that being said, in your opinion, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, what makes a good paranormal investigator?
Oh, integrity, critical thinking skills, integrity, somebody who is able to put things in the right context, this is one of my pet peeves on investigation is people always say, oh, something touched me. Well, maybe something did. I've certainly felt physical sensation on an investigation, but the problem is you can't, that it's kind of an irrelevant type of data because you can't prove that you're touched unless there's a mark is left or, so things like that tend to would always disturb me because you can't do a thing unless you go into a place blind and there's one room where there's been 50 accounts of someone being touched, and you go in blind and you don't know the accounts, and then you're touched in the same place that 50 other people whom you've never met have been touched. Then that's interesting. But that's, people don't always think about correlating data and trying to find patterns and research. It's just a lot of people go in for the experience. They want to be touched. They'll pay extra to be touched.
Right.
So, and that's okay. But if you're interested in the research, that's not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
So I think a good investigator knows what they're doing. They know why they're doing it, and they're able to be honest. If somebody just wants to go in and have a great experience through the whole Ghost Adventures model, I think that's okay as long as they say this is what we're doing. We just want to have fun and not pretend to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. If you're doing it for hobby and just for enthusiasm and a night out or a weekend away and that's all great, I wouldn't consider that being an investigator or even actually capturing evidence because there's a lot of variables that are involved. Especially within the environment and within yourself. Who knows if you were even drinking right before that. So yeah, it's interesting to see the many folks that pop up, even especially on social media, that talk about that. But Deonna, whenever we do a show, I constantly jump in like a pool into research on everything because I'm a sponge. I love to learn so many things. Whether I agree with things or whether I don't, I love to just learn about things. And one of the things that I was actually looking up on YouTube was is Islamic, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, Islamic exorcism. And I was curious to see if there was anything within the Islamic faith that dealt with exorcism. And I saw some disturbing videos of it actually occurring and, being performed and rituals and all that other stuff. Is there a difference between, and if you don't know this, you can let me know, but do you know if there is a big difference between an Islamic exorcism as opposed to a Christian exorcism or some other type of religious exorcism? I mean, is it like sort of the same devil and demon since we sort of have the same God? And is the type of the ritual performed the same as another religion?
Well, I don't exactly know. I guess there are probably different methodologies among Christians on how one would perform an exorcism. I don't exactly know how the Catholic Church would do it. In Islam, there are also different methodologies which one can do. It is similar in the sense that you're using religious texts and different rituals to provoke the jinn, which it would always be the jinn in Islam, to provoke the jinn out of the person. But you're right, there are some very disturbing YouTube videos, and many times it would just be sheer will or sheer consciousness and reciting certain parts of the Quran, blessing. I'll get to this in a second, what I'm about to talk about, but there are also some very disturbing practices in places like Saudi Arabia, which they do all these things and then the person is still allegedly possessed, and sometimes they'll start to beat the person, to beat the jinn out of the person's body, which is horrible. It's horrific.
Yeah.
People can be beat very, very, very badly. One of my relatives in Afghanistan, I had heard the story, she essentially had a stroke, and they didn't really have access to great medical care, so the person they went to basically said, well, she's having some sort of affliction by jinn, so just put her in a dark room for a couple of days. Well, that's the worst thing you would do to someone who's had a stroke, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
So yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of miseducation. People who will just normal medical conditions will have jinn attributed to them. I was in Egypt once, and I heard this great story, and this is very interesting, that there are cases of possession which are very similar to what we are familiar with, people who suddenly have superhuman strength. And the person I was talking to said when his friend was allegedly possessed by a jinn, he was talking in two voices. Like you could literally hear two layers of vocalization occurring when he spoke. Wow. And whenever he would try to perform religious things, this manifestation would occur. So there are some similarities.
Anyone can perform these exorcist rituals, or does it have to be a sort of a higher relic within the religion?
Normally, you would go to someone who's considered a mullah, who may have special skills. You can, in certain parts of the Muslim world, you can have people come into your home to sort of cleanse the jinn out. There are some people who are thought to be able to control the jinn, and there's a certain they have, I guess, a certain ceremony they have to go through to be able to do that. And this is, in the folklore section of Muslim societies, but also jinn are associated with black magic in the Muslim world, but also to a degree white magic, like good magic. And you can go to people in the Muslim world and sort of make curses on somebody because they're using black magic, because they have a relationship with a jinn. But you can also go sometimes for healing. And there's something called tawis. When I was in Pakistan, if you were having like a headache problem or just some sort of minor ailment, you could go and basically get white magic done in tawis, which is a very small piece of paper with some sort of inscription written on it. And some people would put them in a bottle of water, and then the paper would disintegrate, and they would drink it. There's some wonderful stories of when women get married, they'll have these tawis for their husband, and they'll hide them in a way around the house so they can have some sort of control over their husbands. And so, I mean, there's that aspect of it too, where what it is. The jinn are considered gateways to secret knowledge, which can be good or bad. Good, black magic or.
I have a question that just came up as you're speaking. So, is the acceptance of magic more prevalent in the Muslim world?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess magic in the Muslim world would be something considered marginalized. It's actually forbidden. It's not openly encouraged. It's forbidden. Yeah, you can't seek. Yeah, it's forbidden. But there's still an industry around it. In some cases, a lucrative. I mean, some people, that's how they make their living.
This is a general paranormal experience question for you, since you are concentrating more on your writing these days than the paranormal. What was your sort of most prolific experience, or maybe most memorable interaction while investigating the paranormal?
I've had a couple that I thought were very interesting, but one that stands out to me, and I guess this doesn't sound as impressive as, it's not like I had an apparition walk up to me and say, "Hey, what's up?" But I was investigating a farmhouse, and there was a 12-year-old child who was seeing things around the house, and the parents agreed for us to walk across the street. This is in a rural Virginia area, to walk across the road into a cow pasture to visit the grave of the person who used to live in the home. They've been dead for 100 years or something. So it was 11 o'clock at night. Me and another investigator and this little boy went across the road into a cow pasture. There were no trees there. There was a graveyard with a fence around it. It was a full moon. I mean, you could see everything clearly. You could see the cows running around in the field. And we found the grave of the person who's lived in the house. And then I looked up, and right across the fence was this 7-foot shadow figure looking at us. And I could see it as clear as I could see you standing in front of me. And what's amazing is when you see these things, you know you're seeing it. This is what you're here for, to experience it. But then you're still questioning yourself, okay, I know I see that, but that's not really possible. So I was completely sane because I was questioning myself, and I was looking at it, and it's, there were no trees to cast a shadow. It's this thing standing there, and I remember telling it, don't come any closer to me. But because I had this child with me whom I did not know, I didn't want to draw attention to it because I didn't want the kid to freak out, and then we'd have to walk all the way back and bring him home after we just arrived at the cemetery. So I kind of turned my head, and I tried not to draw any attention to it. And about 15 seconds later, the kid goes, "Oh, my God," and he points at it. He goes, "Did you see that?" And he saw it too. And he said, "That's what I see all the time around my house." So it's not like this fantastical story, but I mean, it was the first time. I've seen shadow figures a lot, moving, but it's the first time I looked dead on and I could look at it for several seconds, and it was there, and I knew it. And that was a pretty amazing experience.
And also to be validated by someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And kudos to that little kid. He wasn't scared. He was actually really excited. I've been seeing that for so long. So that was really a cool experience for me.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right.
Well,
I just had a quick.
I've been on.
There must be a delay in the phone. That's why we keep talking over each other. But I did have a quick question. I'm assuming this investigation was here in the States, correct?
Yes, it was.
Have you ever investigated in the Middle East, in Afghanistan or anywhere, and noticed a difference between the West and the East?
I have done some minor investigations in the Kingdom of Bahrain and in Egypt. I will tell you the one place where I felt a completely different energy, that's when I was in Africa. I was in Nairobi, Kenya, just visiting, and the type of energy there is so ancient and so complex. And I'm not in any way trying to paint Africa as the dark continent. But I remember talking to Barry Fitzgerald about this, and I said, the only place I've ever felt a little bit disturbed is when I went to Africa. And he said, you're absolutely right. There's just maybe because that is the cradle of humanity, it's just a very, very different type of vibrational energy there.
It's almost like a sacred ground, it's so ancient and original,
Well, it would just seem like everything there is just so ancient, including whatever energies that's there.
And probably extreme in its goodness and in its darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the only place I ever felt like. Go ahead.
No. Keep going, dear. I'm interested in this.
Well, I mean, and also in African societies, in some African societies, Africa is there are multiple different identities in Africa. It's a very complex cultures. A mixture of colonialism and indigenous ideas and Christianity and Islam and all different things. But even in certain parts of Africa, you do still have black magic and witchcraft, very, very viable parts of the society, in good and bad ways. So it's this energy is constantly being fed and masticizing as well.
It's interesting to me only because I have a very strong interest in voodoo, and of course the voodoo comes from Africa. So just the thought of like how intense the energies are, whether they're good or bad. It just all kind of makes sense. And to hear you say, to talk about it, kind of validates some of the things that I've thought about and found out in my own research.
Mhm. Yeah, you cultivate it, it's going to grow, right? And that's positive or negative.
Yeah.
And when you have systems that have been around in place for thousands of years, it's really amazing, like how the unseen becomes such a force.
Mhm. Mhm. So I do want to mention you do have another book. So you want to go hunt ghosts, a down to the sky. I really love that you talk about the historical research and the documentation of findings. There's so many teams and groups that are out there now. So for the listeners that they haven't started their own paranormal journey, how would you advise them to begin?
Well, there's plenty of information on how to, start a group. But what I would really like people to do, and I talk about this in that book, determine what kind of research you're going to do. Are you going to actually do real research? You're going to be client-based? You're going to be faith-based? You're just going to go around and film yourself having fun, which is fine, but be very clear about it. And whatever you do, do it well. And document. Always write reports. If you go to a location, write everything you can possibly think of. And one thing I talk about in my book is we're collecting so much data. There has never been a point in human history where so much data has been collected on exceptional experiences at locations like Waverly Hills or wherever. All of these places that are being investigated, we're collecting so much data, and granted, some of it may not be very great, but what are we going to do with it? What's the next step? We have to create a body of literature. So whatever you're doing, be honest about it, but also try to preserve it for the future in some way. Because if we really care about trying to understand what these experiences mean to us as human beings, we have to keep it in a way that we can reference later in the future.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my advice.
Well, the book also talks about legalities and ethics. So what does the paranormal team need to know in order to protect themselves from the living?
Again, don't charge money. Once you get into that, that's an exchange of goods and services, and that makes you very liable. Don't charge money. Just honestly, unless you're a company or a limited liability or something, you can have all these contracts signed, but it's really meaningless unless you have some sort of legal structure or you're a nonprofit or something. Definitely, there has to be some ethics, though, and you definitely going into homes where, in many cases, there are some issues. There are mental health issues. There are medical issues, and unless you have someone who is a clinician in mental health, you have to be very careful about diagnosing people and what you tell people, because sometimes there are mental health issues at play that are the paranormal experiences are their mental health issues presenting themselves, but sometimes people with mental health issues also have the ability to perceive things that you and I can't. So just having some ethical boundaries in what you tell people and how you handle the things that you see. And I know we talk about going in and asking people what medications they're on. I never realized how important that was until I started working in mental health. And I think that's very important, knowing about the medications that your clients may be taking, and don't offer advice if you don't know what you're doing, and just being very mindful of the lives. People are telling you stories if you go into client homes that they probably won't tell that many people. So be respectful of that and be humble in that experience, and just don't do any harm.
That's the best thing that I have actually heard anyone say in the manner of giving advice to folks, because that's the number one thing, and it's basically the number one reason that Lucy and I don't go into residential homes and go to families, because I'm not knowledgeable in that, and I'm not I couldn't live with myself if I were to go into someone's home and claim that I do, and then, do my investigation, and then possibly stir something up that could even make whatever was going on, whatever activity was there, even worse. And Lucy and I have stressed that, many times on our show before, and that's the number one thing that people don't really understand or try and learn about before they walk into that home. And so I'm glad you said that, because it needs to be said, and I think the need for folks who are in groups really do need to sort of think about that before they step out again and go into that next home, because there are things that could happen within the residential, within the family itself, the family unit, let alone putting away the paranormal aside, just that family unit, what could be disturbing, what you're doing that could be disturbing that family unit on a mental note. And so I appreciate what you just said.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I have been shaking
you're welcome.
my head yes through your whole response.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I've always said it's such an honor to do this. It's such an honor to experience the world this way, and for people to trust you enough to come into their homes and to ask you to make sense of these things that are happening. So again, you're working with very, very valuable goods, and in my belief system, you will be accountable if you screw it up. Karma will come and find you. So just be mindful of that.
Well, you had talked earlier, and forgive me for going back in the conversation, but we talked earlier about the Jinn and what they are, and exercising, and you mentioned also possibly the idea of controlling Jinns. Can we? I don't know if this is the right word, but can we exorcise a Jinn? Can we get rid of a Jinn, or are they with us until we pass on?
Well, there's a couple. I mean, people I've heard it said that we all have a Jinn, that we're all assigned a Jinn, that we have a twin Jinn. I don't exactly know how that fits into everything. The Jinn are just, I guess they're made out of smokeless fire, apparently, which is some sort of plasma. Maybe they're vibrating at such a frequency that we can't see them. Perhaps they're around us all the time. But I think, like anything else, any other element of the unseen, you can set boundaries, and you can say, you don't come past this boundary in my life. And that's, some people don't want those boundaries, and some people do, and I think that's probably one of the you have to do that with people, right? You have to set boundaries with people. So obviously you have to set boundaries with these other things that may be around you at all times, and not to invite something in that you're not prepared to deal with.
Well, Deanna, when we first started to promote the show last week, we got really great responses. People were like, this is a very interesting topic. Oh, I'd love to listen to it and understand that more. And the meaning was more along the lines of Muslim in the paranormal. How come we don't hear more about Muslims in the paranormal?
I don't know. I mean, maybe because there's not tons of Muslims in the paranormal. I'm sure there are more out there, I'm sure, but I guess because I'm a writer and it's just something I could kind of publicly disseminate. There are Muslims doing this type of research in the Muslim world. There are groups popping up. I know there was a TAPS somebody. There was a group in Afghanistan a couple of years ago applying for TAPS family status. I don't know what happened with that. But of course, in the Muslim world, there are other issues to deal with, like political issues, and they're much more important. I mean, doing paranormal investigation is a luxury that we have in our society. But the work that's being done in Muslim countries on these issues are normally through religious scholars, like mullahs or people who are going in and cleansing houses or whatever through a religious perspective. So they wouldn't call themselves paranormal investigators; they would call themselves religious scholars.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, you know what, Deanna, this has been really an interesting discussion. Where do we go from here? Is there anything that you want our listeners to know about being Muslim or about the paranormal that we haven't brought up?
Well, I would say about being Muslim, like I know there are lots of really strange ideas about Islam, but probably whatever, if you're watching Fox News or whatever you know, is probably not true. And I would encourage you to try to get to know Muslims. I think that is a really fun thing to do. And Muslims, go hug a Muslim. Muslims are really cool. Muslims are nice. And in terms of the paranormal, when it comes to these things, the paranormal is a great equalizer because we all come from different backgrounds, pagan, Christian, Muslim, and we are all seeking something that makes us very much the same and makes us very human. So at the end of the day, if something shows up in front of your bed, you're going to react the same way regardless if you're Muslim, Christian, or whatever.
Right.
We're all seeking the same source of love and light.
Absolutely.
Where can, we mentioned a lot of your work, but where's the best place for our listeners to learn more about your work and be able to follow you?
I would visit my website. I would Google Deonna Kelli Sayed. The last name is Sayed. I do have a WordPress site at DeonnaKelliSayed.com. I'm on Facebook and Twitter at Deonna Kelli. And I have a new Tumblr site, which I have a podcast series that has nothing to do with the paranormal. It's dksayed.tumblr.com. If you Google me, you can probably find whatever aspect of my life you want to explore. You can probably find it. And I want to commend you. The two of you have asked such thoughtful questions tonight, and I am so impressed. I'm so impressed with you.
Well, Deanna, actually, I have one more question. We talked about it earlier that you sort of hung up your hat on the paranormal. Will you ever get back into the paranormal?
I miss it. I miss field investigation. I miss the research part. So perhaps, if my life ever reaches a stability, I certainly want to get back into field research. And I'm writing my memoir, which will probably have a lot of that in it. And I'll talk more literary about how the paranormal has influenced me. So, yeah, I hope so. I mean, it's a wonderful way to know the world, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be perfectly honest with you, the paranormal world needs more people like you in it. So that's the only reason why I say that.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Deonna, this has been so amazing. It's been a wonderful discussion. We want to thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. And you know what? It's just been great, and we really would love to have you back on the show again.
Well, thank you. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, absolutely, Deonna. Thank you so much, and we appreciate you being so candid with us and honest and opening up this world. And as you said, everyone should sort of hug a Muslim, and maybe don't cross the line when you hug a Muslim, but hug a Muslim.
No fondling.
No fondling. Hopefully we were able to. Hopefully we were able to hug you tonight and introduce you to our listeners, and I hope everyone sort of is retaining the knowledge that was spoken about tonight. So thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Deonna.
Have a great weekend, Deonna.
You too. Good night.
All right,
Bye-bye.
Good night. That was a great conversation, and as I said before, Lucy, one of the first books that I was ever given as a gift was Paranormal Obsession. It was my sister who bought it for me for my birthday, and I had read the book, and this was before we got on the air and having this show. And I always said I would love to, once we started this, I said I would love to have her on as a guest, and it was always in the back of my head to talk to her because, one, I was always fascinated with pop culture and paranormal itself and how this sort of just erupted. You could probably say overnight it erupted in the media and in pop culture. And it really was an interesting and insightful book, Paranormal Obsession, to learn about, what it is that the media has how the media sort of has influenced us within the paranormal, or us as just viewers of all of these paranormal media outlets. And it's a very interesting book. And ever since then, I said, I got to talk to her. I really want to talk to her. And so I'm really, it's sort of actually come a little bit full circle for me tonight, because it was, I've been talking about it and thinking about it for so long. So I'm glad we did, and I hope our listeners were able to get a better understanding of Deonna herself, but also to just talking about Muslim and Islamic faith and the paranormal itself. I think it's a hot topic, obviously, within the news, and we wanted to sort of bring that down into the paranormal and educate and sort of get to know what it's all about. What is Muslim in the paranormal, and how does that relate, and what does that look like? So I'm hoping that we sort of conveyed that tonight.
Well, I found it totally educational. I mean, I really did learn a lot of things that I really didn't understand. And all during the research, I mean, even reading her blogs about the other aspects of her life besides the paranormal part of it, it's just really, truly interesting and educational. Things I didn't know about, misconceptions that I had, she cleared up a lot of them. And I was really curious to find out about, since she had written the book Paranormal Obsession, how she saw the paranormal community as a whole changing. And she hit it right on the money. I mean,
I knew you did on that topic.
But, I mean, true. I mean, it's everything that I've already either said or thought. And I have to agree with her 100%.
Well, yeah, I mean, she wasn't BSing at all on that aspect. She hit it, hit the nail right on the head with that. It is, and as she was saying, if you are just an enthusiast within the paranormal, that's great, that's fine. She doesn't see anything wrong with it. It's just take it at that face value, and don't label yourself then as a paranormal investigator if this is just a side hobby that you do once in a blue moon, or if maybe if it was just a one weekend with a bunch of friends or family. You wouldn't be considered as a paranormal investigator. Now, if you captured anything during that time and people debate it, then you have to understand that because there's so many variables, and with someone who is not, or someone who's not a novice within it, that you may not understand what other variables were involved that could have caused that, and so therefore many people won't jump on it and say yes, that's the best evidence in the world. So it is a little bit of a gray topic to talk about within the paranormal, and whether or not media is going in the right direction, it's up for debate. I think they always say any press, whether bad or good, is good press. So if the word that's getting out there and the promotion of the paranormal itself is getting into the living rooms of everybody in the world, then that's great. But I think you need to be cautious in how it's being related and how it's being conveyed to people, because that is how people create their mindset and their opinions about the paranormal. And from the looks of it, from what we see now on television, just for today, that it's not a very good opinion. And so it's sort of kid-like and amateurish and full of drama. And that is not how the field operates. That's not how a good majority of groups and teams and single investigators out there perform. There's a lot of folks who are like Lucy and I who are serious about it and who don't joke around and don't try to create, there may be drama that pops up, but we don't try to create that drama. And so it's not sort of like what you see on television. So I appreciate her honesty in that aspect.
Well, that's the one thing that I kept thinking about. I mean, unfortunately, it just seems like a majority of people have based their paranormal knowledge on what you see on television. And there's so much more than just that. Television is entertainment. We've said it before. It involves a little bit more. It involves a whole lot more. You have to do research. You have to look at what your intention is when you first go into it. Is it something that you want to experience? Is it something you really, really, truly want to learn about? It's, and when she was talking about, like, being touched, I get touched all the time. I can't prove it. I cannot prove it. But it happens to me every time we've gone to a location. Something has touched me, and I can't prove it. It's my personal experience. But I enjoy it. Yes, I do go because I want to get touched. But that's
usually why I don't know if you noticed, but I don't pay any attention.
You don't pay attention to me?
No, I don't pay attention to you when that happens to you because, not that it's a broken record, but, obviously they reach out to you because, you are more sensitive and more empathetic to that side of things. But I don't pay attention to it because there's nothing I can do with it. Just like Deonna said, there's nothing I can do with it. Maybe you can incorporate it into your findings and your discoveries, but I can't do anything with it, so I don't pay real much attention to it.
Nobody can. I mean, unfortunately, there's no way that I can document or prove the fact that I've been touched. But in my own personal experience, yes, it does confirm a lot of the things that I've learned, and it kind of sums up everything. And I'm at the point right now where if I go into a location and I get touched, it's not really, well, yes, it is a thrill, but it's not like it used to be before. I mean, it's never been scary to me, never. And, and some people say, if I get touched, I would run out of there. It's not that. I accept that, and I think it's because my belief that there is something on the other side that I've always accepted it. But now it's kind of like, okay, good, you touched me. Now communicate with me. You know, it's kind of like part of a whole package. It's not just this one thrill, you know, like, oh, I got touched. You know, I've never been scratched. I mean, that's the one thing that I do think about. All these experiences where I've been touched, they've never really been negative. They've never been I've never felt anything that was negative. Now you've been scratched. To me, that is definitely a negative experience. I've never felt that. I don't want to feel that. But it does lead me to think, you know, I think about this, like, how is it that some people do get scratched and others don't? You know, what is it that leads a spirit or an entity to do that kind of action to a certain person? You know, what is it? Is it something that they said? Is it the attitude? Is it, you know, maybe they just don't like you? I mean, those are more questions. Like I said, everything we do always leads to a million more questions for me. And that's the beauty of this whole going into the paranormal and investigating it. It's like, yes, I'm getting some answers. I don't have all the answers, but it's leaving me to all these other questions, and I love that.
Well, I'm going to comment on that, but Sharon actually just posted in chat, which I like and I want to repeat, and she wrote, "It's not a novelty anymore. Now it's real." I like that comment. I tweak it a little bit and say it's always been real, but I think now the mindset should be, okay, it's not a novelty anymore. It's real. And I think that's the direction that the media and television shows and the like should go into. It should get to that direction, and that's what should be conveyed. So thank you, Sharon, for sharing that in chat. But I do want to comment, and you made you stated an opinion about, you know, that a scratch is negative or bad, and I disagree with you. I don't think that it is, and it's not fair to put a tone to an action when you don't know, first of all, where the action is coming from, or you don't even know the mindset of the spirit or whatever it is. And so I can't say, you know, yes, I was scratched, but I can't say whether or not that was negative or not. I could simply say that is someone trying to get someone's attention, just like, you know, a book is thrown off the desk. Would you consider that to be negative? I don't think so.
I'm going to tell you something that happened today. I had a clock fly off the wall by itself.
Okay, so is that negative?
At the time, it felt it. I mean, this clock has been on the wall. We checked the nail. We checked everything. Floors don't shake. Walls don't shake. If you slam a door, no doors were slammed. This clock flew off the wall and hit my glass dining room table. It didn't break it, but it was just really
right. But
startled
you right, okay. So it startled you and frightened you, and so you automatically, your body gives off the feeling that that's something bad, because it's obviously not anything. In a real world, that's not good. If something makes a loud noise, sudden loud noise, and something drops or falls, that's not a good sign. You know, if you drop your keys, that's not a good sign. You always curse when you're bending over to pick it up, right? So having that happen, obviously your body gives off that energy that it's negative. But I think what should be done at that point is not perpetuate that negativity, because you're creating that persona of the negativity in that action itself. So I don't think that it's negative. I'm not saying that it's good, but I'm saying I don't know what it is, and to automatically say it's negative. And that's what happens with a lot of television shows, that if there's, you know, something that falls or teddy bear moves or whatever, you know, people could say that it is a demonic or, you know, evil entity or something that is not of the good. So I frown upon that, because again, you're putting a tone before even understanding where it's coming from. So I don't know what it is. And even the touching that you got, that could have been the devil touching your hand, but you would automatically think that it's a child or it's a woman or it's whatever. You don't know who's touching you. You don't see the manifestation. In most cases, you don't. So it's kind of unfair to do that and to label these experiences, right off the bat without sort of taking into context.
You know how it feels. I mean, when it's happening, you kind of know how it feels. I mean, I'm sure if there's there's a difference between like a gentle touch and a rough touch, and so far nothing has felt rough. Nothing has felt. I don't know. Nothing's felt bad. Now, this clock that flew off the wall, yeah, it kind of startled me. I kind of let it go, but I wanted to make sure that it wasn't like an earthquake or it wasn't the wall falling. I mean, I went through all the steps afterwards. And, this is like the second thing that's happened. I've had something happen in the front room where a smaller item flew off an end table. This was like the biggest thing that's ever flown off the wall. It's, I don't know. Like I said, at this point, I can't say that it's negative, but I don't know what it's like. Now, I do have someone here that does try to get my attention. For all I know, maybe they are really trying to get my attention, and maybe it's time to sit down and try to figure out who it is. I mean, I've always kind of just not paid attention to it, not given it any real credence either way, if it's good or bad. But this is the first time that it has, something that huge. And the clock's not that heavy, but it's still, in order to take it off the wall, you have to kind of lift it off the nail and then pull it down. This thing flew completely off. So I don't know how to take it right now. I mean, I'm not feeling that it's negative at this point. I didn't feel anything negative. It was more that it really just scared the heck out of me. It startled me. Because, there's really not a whole lot that scares me. This, flying off the table, I was more scared of my table. I didn't want my table to break. And that's kind of like what that was. Now, as far as it being negative, I don't feel anything negative, so I'm not going to assume it's negative. But at that point, it startled me. It scared me.
Well, the one thing that does scare you is that if there's no Pepsi in the refrigerator, I know that.
Well, that too.
Exactly. One of the things that I had mentioned during the course of the discussion with Deonna was what I personally do with paranormal research and in investigating is but to put aside any religious bias or religious beliefs that I have in order to gain more clarity within the paranormal. And, that may sound a little controversial to some people, but I don't think so. What I'm trying to do is trying to clear my mind out of what the perception of the paranormal is within a mass media of religious faith base are, and I say that with every religion, and it's not because I'm not denouncing my own religion in the name of paranormal. What I'm doing is putting it aside so that I actually look at what it is I'm investigating with an open mind and clarity, so that I can see it for what it is. And if necessary, I'll bring in the religion to either validate or to try and make sense of it if it relates to it. But I don't automatically use religion as a foundation or as a basis for my beliefs within the paranormal and what I'm experiencing. And that may sound controversial, or it may sound as though I'm a bad person, but I think it makes for a better, regardless paranormal or not, I think it makes for a better researcher or an investigator, because that's what detectives do. They don't say, well, in all of the years that they've been a detective, this has always happened at a murder scene. They don't think of what has happened at another murder scene when they're investigating a new one. They have to take the evidence as it is at that moment, understand it, to try and formulate what the story is based on what's in front of them. If it relates to what they've done in the past, okay. But if it doesn't, then it should be separated from it and then researched further in that manner. So that's sort of the mindset that I have within paranormal investigating. And I try and even sometimes bring in a lot of other religions to try and validate what I'm seeing. You know, I may go into Judaism. I may go into Buddhism. I may go into a lot of other areas that I have researched before to see if that puzzle fits within, or that piece fits within that puzzle of that specific religion. And so that's how I operate. And I don't know whether or not that's good or bad. I'm not saying that that's what everybody should be doing, but that's what I do. And I think that helps me get to understand what I'm seeing in front of me a lot better. And I don't know if you agree with that, and I don't know if, Lucy, you do that when you're out there with me.
I don't see what's wrong with that statement. I mean, isn't paranormal investigating kind of like actually being a detective of sorts? I mean, we're trying to find out what these entities and what the activity is. As far as bringing religion into it, like, are you saying, like, you don't automatically assume that it's the devil or it's an angel, or is that what you're saying?
Yes, and also because, you know, Christianity itself technically does not believe in a spirit form that comes back to communicate with the living. And so what they say in the Bible is that if you are speaking to someone of the spiritual realm, you're actually talking to a demon. And so it is not your, you know, great Aunt Bertha. It's a demon. It's the devil. It's whatever, taking on the form of your Aunt Bertha and trying to manipulate you. That's what the Bible teaches. And so obviously I'm not going to have that mindset. I'm not going to. Why would we be out then investigating if that was the case? If we're just talking to the devil, I'm not talking to Aunt Bertha. So why are we doing this every week or 4 times a year, whatever it is? Why are we doing it then? It doesn't make sense. So I'm putting that aside so that I can understand what the paranormal is about, because I don't believe I'm talking to the devil. The evidence that I have seen and the experiences that I have encountered, to me, I can't say at this point that that's the demon or that's the devil. Okay,
so I totally agree with you. When I'm out there and I do experience something, religion, I don't automatically assume that it's religious-based. I mean, for some reason, when I'm investigating, it's like, okay, this is something that's happening. It does not automatically, I don't automatically assume that it's a demon or it's of a religious base. I mean, that doesn't come into play at all. That's just how I look at it. I mean, I don't see it in that light.
I mean, the religion does and doesn't. Again, at this point in my life, I don't know what is truth, what is fact, and what is false. I don't know what it is. So that's my internal journey and my internal debate that I have. But I found tonight's show, and I wanted to do tonight's show, for our listeners and for people who may be interested in this, but also too for myself, because I wanted to understand what the Islamic faith and how that weaves within the paranormal and how the aspects of paranormal and the beliefs of paranormal as a Muslim creates the mindset of an investigator, and how does that religion teach, or what does that religion teach about the paranormal? How do they go about educating their fellows and their followers and the people who are within the religion? How do they teach them, or what do they teach them actually, that involves the afterlife and that involves spirits, or in this case, jinns? How is that formed? What about the jinns or should we know that could possibly explain maybe what we're seeing as ghosts and spirits? Could they be the same? Are they different? Are there aspects to a jinn that are similar to a spirit? we've learned, tonight that it isn't, because jinns are formed, or what I've learned in research, jinns are formed and created outside of a soul and assigned to people, and everyone is born with one, basically, and it's sort of almost the equivalent to a guardian angel, you could say. If you stretch that word a little bit, you could say that it could be a guardian angel. So it's interesting to see how, first of all, these different religions have similar aspects to itself and to each other, and so somewhere in there is the truth. Obviously, I'm never going to know what that is until I die, but while we're investigating and while we're researching, can any of those aspects and can any of that knowledge within the Muslim faith, the Christian faith, Judaism, Buddhism, Taoism, anyone, can any of those religions help validate and help us understand the paranormal a little bit more, and to help us or guide us in the correct direction that we need to go into, or is it more of a hindrance? And so therefore that's why I put it aside and wait until I get everything collected, and then bring in all the other variables to see whether or not the puzzle pieces fit.
I get that. I understand that. I mean, that makes sense to me, because I can't see, at this point in my life, I do question everything. I question, a lot of my religious beliefs. I have this conflict between the Native American side and the Catholic side that I was raised in. I have questions on both sides. I also have questions about the religions that I don't know. I mean, the things that I don't understand. And the only way that I'm going to possibly get a clearer picture of everything is to learn about, the other religions and what their views are on the afterlife and what they're dealing with. One thing I found interesting when she was talking about the possession, and the person that was speaking in two voices, that description happens in exorcisms. If you look at a Catholic exorcism, that happens to some of those people where they hear voices. So, I mean, that was something that was similar. So while this is happening in the Muslim religion, it's also happening when a Catholic gets exorcised in some cases. So, as a whole, I really truly believe, though, my personal belief is that, people talk about demons and they talk about, demons affecting us and that. I really think that happens, but I don't think it happens as much as people want to believe it does. I have problems with that. I have problems understanding that, maybe because I've never really come in contact with anything that could be described as that. So until I do, or until I really find out about it, it's a little hard for me to understand.
Again, I don't want to get into a debate with you, or we could, but I think, again, what you're doing is you're labeling. How do you know and I think I've even asked you this before on another show, how do you know that you have not come in contact with a demon? I think what you have in your mind is a preconceived notion of what a quote-unquote demon is and what it could possibly feel and look like. But do you truly know that you've never come in contact with a demon?
No, I don't. But I think to understand something, don't we have to kind of give it a label to identify what it is?
See, I think what and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you're trying to say is how quick people label demonic to the attribute of whatever may be happening in front of them. And it goes with what I'm saying is, because you have a preconceived notion of what something bad is, the clock falling down on the floor, me being scratched, whatever it is, automatically we put the label of it being demonic on it right away, because in our culture and in our nature, that's something bad. If somebody were to scratch you, if another living person were to scratch you, you'd punch them out, or you'd yell at them, right? Or they'd be arrested. That's against the law, you know. So in our minds, that's something that is bad. But all of bets are off in the spiritual world. To my understanding, and this is what my belief is, I can be wrong, but this is what my belief is, that all bets are off in the spiritual world. So if someone spiritual, a spiritual being, entity, scratches you, it could be negative, or it could be a way of getting your attention. It could be the emotions of the energy that is coming about that created that scratch, but it was not meant to be in a negative manner. Maybe it was meant to be in a, hey, look, Lucy, here I am. I'm right here. Hello, I'm right behind you. Hello, I'm in front of you. I knocked off the clock. Don't you see me now? So that's how I sort of perceive it. And so I don't know whether or not that was a demon that did that, or if that was an angel that did that, or if that was a jinn that did that. I don't know what it is at this point. I think it's unfair for people to put labels on these things, just like it's unfair for people to put labels on people living. I think it's unfair for us to put labels on the dead before or not even understanding who it is or what it is that is there in front of you. So I don't think you can honestly say that you've never come in contact with a demon because all your experiences were good. Like I said before, a demon can touch you very softly. A demon can come in the form of a child and talk to you. You have no clue.
I get that, but I don't know. I'm just saying that I don't feel that I've come in contact with one yet. I really don't. Except for you.
Yes, I can be demonic at times. I just try and keep everyone's mind open to when dealing with the paranormal. You have to keep your mind open at all times. And I don't think you'll ever, and we've said this before, I don't think we're ever going to know fully or understand fully to the T what afterlife is all about.
Mm-hmm.
How
Until
can
we get
you?
There.
Till we get there. And so to me it's unfair to label it. I think what we're trying to do is we try and label things so that based upon the best evidence that we have, obviously, and it's a scientific mindset, obviously, that we have, that the experience, the research that we've done, and the evidence that we've been able to capture, that you could safely say that was a demonic activity. I would be okay with that answer if you backed it up by saying those factors, saying, based upon my research, based upon blah, 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 based upon this, based upon that, I'd be happy with that answer. But when people automatically come out and say, if they first see, and you see it on television all the time, when somebody is pushed or whatever, come on, you evil demon, come out, automatically that energy is being put out, and it's being put on that person, or that spirit. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense to do that, and it shouldn't be done that way within the paranormal world, or even in the living world. It shouldn't be done that way.
Well, I agree with you 100% on that. Case in point, the Ouija board. I really, really, really have a problem with people saying it's a portal to evil. I do.
Right.
I don't believe that.
Right, and so that same mindset that people put on the Ouija board, they're putting on spirits without having full knowledge of what it is. And just as aggravated and as frustrated as you get about when people say that about the Ouija board, it's sort of the same way that I feel about, people who say that about the spirits and the encounters that they have, and right off the bat they label it without really understanding what it is. I know we're getting off way off topic right now, way off topic, but we've got 26 minutes left. So if anybody wants to call in, The number is 661-244-9831. I encourage people to come in and talk about it. Call in and curse me out. Tell me I'm an idiot for thinking that way. I don't care. This is an open platform to talk about the paranormal. Why are you laughing at me?
Because I'm waiting for someone to call.
Yes, no. Lucy's not paying anybody to call, so call on your own.
Wait a minute. Now you made me forget. There was something else that she talked about that I really wanted to talk about. And I can't remember what it is now. Oh, God. I don't know what it was. My mind's a blank.
Okay. What did you think about Deonna, and I guess what was your understanding of being a Muslim and the Islamic faith before tonight, as opposed to what it is sort of right now?
I still don't totally understand. I don't understand it, but I think I'm a little bit more open after talking to her to understanding, because my impression has always been, and that was the reasoning behind my question asking about, it seems so totally male-dominated, where women really, one passage I read from the Quran was saying something that, when it talked about the hijab and wearing head coverings, that women need to be modest and they need to defer to like their husband or to the male in their family. I was raised like a wolf, a wild wolf, I mean, I can't imagine deferring to someone, to asking permission. I don't understand that part of it. But listening, talking to her kind of cleared that up a little bit, because there's other parts of the Quran that does say that a woman is entitled to be educated and she's entitled to work and do things like that. So I think a lot of what I've seen is what the media puts up, and you only see, you don't exactly see the whole story. What you're seeing is what, again, like with the paranormal, you're seeing what Hollywood and what television gives you. And I think there's a bigger truth behind it, and that's the part that I want to learn. And I learned a lot more from her blogs, which talked about her daily life, that didn't have anything to do with the paranormal. I really enjoyed reading those. So I think there's a lot more research I need to do. And yes, I do need to go hug a Muslim, because this is a part of the world that I know nothing about. I really have never really come in contact with anyone of that faith. And I really am curious about it. I mean, I would like to learn more about how they live their lives, as opposed to what I'm being spoon-fed by the media.
All right. Well, we have a caller, area code 587. Hello, you are on the air with Anthony and Lucy. Who's this?
Oh, I was looking to order a pizza. Isn't this Anthony and Lucy's Pizza Parlor?
I'm sorry, this is not a pizza place. This is Chinese food. I'm sorry, ma'am.
Oh, darn. Okay, thanks.
Yes,
I'm sorry I was late. I thought
You're
it was
late
Thursday.
to the show?
I'm so late. Yeah. I'm sorry.
What happened?
I thought it was Thursday.
Are you?
I did.
Are you smoking that crack again?
I'm not sharing again.
Oh, okay.
Connie, you're sniffing the cleaning solution, aren't you?
I am. I tell you that Lysol. It's got a kick. No.
Yeah. I prefer Mr. Clean.
Oh, I got some of that. It's nice.
So do you have a question for us?
No,
Fang?
but Miss Fang says yes, you should get to know the Muslim culture.
Say that again?
You should get to know the Muslim culture. and what it's all about.
I want
and
to.
The true Muslims people are amazing people. Not what we see in the news. Those aren't the true followers of the religion.
Well, yeah, because what I read, I mean, Islam is about love. It's about love for God, and God is the main thing that you embrace. So a lot of what you see on television, though, and in the news kind of conflicts with that idea. And that's where my disconnect came. This is where I didn't understand. And the research has helped me a whole lot to learn more about it. And talking to Deonna really did open a whole bunch of doors for me.
Oh, yeah. Like, I can't wait. I got to re-listen to it when it's posted again, because I missed all of her. I came in as you guys were saying goodbye. I'm like, But, no, like, I was totally intrigued. Like, what are her views on it? And, of course, I'm an idiot, and I missed the whole thing. But, you know, I can't wait to re-listen to that tomorrow and listen to what she has to say, because it's really beautiful. If you look at the entire, like, faith, the Muslim faith and all that, they put all of us to shame. They really do, and their true beliefs. Mm-hmm. That's my personal opinion on it.
It's funny because just this week, I don't know if it was CNN or one of the news outlets, they were, I guess, trying to explain the justification for ISIS, and trying to explain to us why they're doing what they're doing. And they were saying that they were taking the Quran or certain parts of the Quran literally, and therefore that if you were to take the Quran literally, ISIS would be correct. Okay? So in other religions, and I can only, I guess, speak for the Catholic religion, if you were to take the Bible literally, we would be the same way. It would be the same thing. There are many things within the Bible that, you know, we should not be doing. You know, we should not even be eating shrimp, or else we're going to hell. Women are not meant to be of any level anywhere close to a man within the Bible. That's what it states. And so it's almost the same thing. So if there was a Catholic extremist that would come out, they'd be doing the same thing that ISIS is doing if they took the Bible literally. It's the same thing with the Quran. And so I think that's where the misconception is with a lot of folks who are being, you know, sort of spoon-fed all this stuff in the media about the Islamic faith, and they think ISIS is the Islamic faith. But no, those are the extremists. And if you take that idea and plant it as like the Crusaders and the Inquisition did many, many years ago, then that would be we would be the same thing, and that's where the ignorance is, and that's where people don't get it. They don't understand that's where that link is.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I mean, it's already happened in the Catholic religion. It was called the Inquisition.
Right.
And also, too, well, all these, the Bibles, the Qurans, all of those are all written by man. And if you look back, like, the stories change as time goes on. They change. It's a little bit different, little bit different, little bit different. So the way it was way back in the day when all of this happened, well, is that the way it's supposed to be? Who knows? You know, like, who knows? It's changed so much. And it's just, I don't know. That's why I don't follow any one religion. You know, like, which one's the right one? We don't know. Right. We really don't know.
That's one thing I can't say, because I do, as I do understand, the Bible has been changed, and certain leaders during history have kind of modified it to their own purposes. As far as the Quran goes, I really don't know, and I would be curious to find out if there's been any kind of modifications, or is it still in the same form that it's always been? Has it ever been modified?
Look at pictures back in the 40s and 50s of the women in Israel and all those areas. They were dressing just like everybody else. They, like, if you look at all these old pictures, they're dressed just like everybody else. It's been the last 40, 50 years that these women have changed to the burqas and the hijabs and everything else. And, you know, if that makes them feel good, fine, that's cool. But it's not necessity that they wear them.
But according to some of the extremists, it is.
Exactly.
Well, because they're taking things literally.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's very messed up. I almost said the F word there. I almost pulled an Anthony. It just a lot of it doesn't make a lot of sense with ISIS and all that. But you know, the true religion behind that, not the extremists, is one of peace and love and everything else, and being thankful for everything, not beheading complete strangers because they're American or Canadian. You know, I guess I'm really lucky. I am Canadian. I grew up with Muslims all around me. So to me, I just accept them as everybody else.
Yeah, I was doing some research, and I read that Canada has a higher percentage of Muslims than America does. I forgot what the percentage number is, but the Canada does have more Muslim and more people of the Islamic faith than the United States.
Yeah, my elementary school is now, the one I went to is now all Muslim. The junior high school I went to, so that's grades 7 to 9, that's all Muslim now. If you're a white child in those schools, you are now the minority. Like in Edmonton, it's just a huge amount of Muslim people of the Muslim faith.
Well, Connie, let me ask you a question. Since you grew up and you've been around a lot more Muslims than I or Lucy have, has anyone, and since this is a paranormal show, has anyone ever talked to you about the paranormal who are of the Islamic faith?
No, that's why I'm so interested in listening to what she has to say. Like, I know one of those friends is Muslim, and he's just sweet as the day is long. But have I really gotten into talking about religion with him? No. I call him my second husband.
Yeah, that's why this show, it was interesting for us to do this, because, again, Muslims, we don't know anything about them. I mean, I don't know anything about the religion itself. And so it was interesting to find that connection within the paranormal and understand how they connected, because you never really hear about that. And Deonna is the only one that I've understood to be in the States that is of the faith and is of within the paranormal, and kind of intrigued me for some time now.
For sure. I can't wait to hear what she has to say.
Well, I know the real reason why Connie called was to curse me out, right?
Tell
like
you
I
off?
said before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured that.
And then you just got me all off topic, you asshole, you.
And yes, he is a demon, is he not, Connie?
He is. He is so a demon. I have seen his head spin. I have seen it with my own 4 eyes.
No, that's Lucy. You didn't see me do that. That was Lucy.
Oh, please. The only thing I've seen out of Lucy is her little halo.
Sweetness and light.
That's the demon in disguise. Well, thank you, Connie, for calling in. Appreciate it. Love you too, Sue, so much. And you better be listening to the beginning of the show later.
I will. Hurry up and post it.
All right.
I will. All right.
Okay,
love you.
Talk to you guys soon. Love you guys. Bye.
Have a good weekend, Connie. Love you too.
You know what? This show was just, I wanted to hear something nice and something that wasn't negative. That's what I wanted, and I think that's what I got. You know, everything just seems to be so negative that you hear, and I just wanted to hear something nice, something positive, and I think we did that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to do a full-on show on the Muslim faith and really getting into it and really getting into what they believe in the paranormal. I think it's a much more deeper discussion and a longer discussion than the hour or so minutes that we had with Deonna. But like with almost a lot of the shows that we do, time is of a constraint with us. But we'd like to bring the topic out on the table so that people try to at least understand it a little bit. If they get a taste of it, a little appetizer of what the topic is tonight, and maybe try and learn more about it. Maybe it'll intrigue folks to do a little bit research on their own, or if they know someone of the Islamic faith, maybe ask them the question, what do you believe in the paranormal? What is your belief in it? And how does your religion tie into the paranormal itself, and understand that a little bit better? I encourage that. As Deonna was saying, everyone should hug a Muslim and then ask them about the paranormal if they're open to talking about it. Obviously, don't go up to a stranger and just ask them, if you ask a stranger what color they like, they'll think you got four heads and walk away from you. But maybe that'll spark, again, another conversation. And as we always say, communication is the key to finding the truth. This type of communication is something different that may bring a different angle to the paranormal that many people may not have been thinking about before.
Well, it's just start a conversation. And it's obviously on a topic that means something to you and very possibly means something to them. And the fact that you've got two parties that are interested in the same thing, you start a great conversation, and from that conversation you can learn so much. And I did tonight.
Well, I do want to say thank you to Deonna Kelli Sayed, and that's Kelly with an I. I'm gonna post on our Facebook show page, Paranormal Review Radio, some of the links so that if you're interested, you can follow her. She's out of the paranormal, as we've said before. She sort of hung up her hat as a paranormal investigator. But what was interesting to us is that the paranormal actually set her on the road to be the person who she is today. I've heard her on other interviews talk about how watching Ghost Hunters for the first time propelled her to become an author and a writer, and that's what sparked that first book, Paranormal Obsession, and got her intrigued into the paranormal itself, and has led her down the road that she is right now, being an excellent writer. I mean, she's the beautiful words that she has written, dare I say, obscene. They're just too good to be even read. I would say she's just very prolific in the way that she writes her words, and I'm probably butchering the way that I'm describing it, but she is a great writer, and I thought it would be really interesting to have her on the show and talk about those aspects and hit on the key points that are actually sort of on people's minds right now, and bring that down to the paranormal level so that we can sort of get into the world of Deonna. So if you're interested, Deonna Kelli Sayed, that's Kelly with an I, and Sayed, S-A-Y-E-D. You can just Google her, and I'm sure you'll find all of her different websites and Twitter account and Tumblr and all of that good stuff that you can follow and look her up.
The blogs on Love and Salah, those are the ones. As a woman, they are really, really interesting because it gives you a different perspective on the same issues that women, Christian women here in the United States, they're the same issues that we think about and we talk about. And it's just really, really interesting to see them from a different perspective. You really need to you should at least read a couple of them and just see how it affects you. It really did. It opened my eyes a whole lot. It really did. And I'm really grateful that we did this show. So, let's get to business. Let's do the Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week. And, we get a lot of people who listen to us on YouTube. So, we do get many comments from our YouTube channel, and yes, we do read them, both good and bad. So this week, we'd like to acknowledge one of our fans who listens to the videos of the show. Now, we don't have much info on him, but we appreciate him just the same. This week, our Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week is Sandor Fazekas of Canada. He commented on the Operation Bumblebee upload, and I quote, "Great show, guys. Still waiting to be Fan of the Week. I was in Springfield, Ohio last fall, and I sat in at one of Chip's readings. Was not impressed. Until you actually see him read in person, don't make a comment, positive or negative. This goes for any psychic reading. What you see on TV is cut and edited and made to look like the psychic is spot on. Going to see Teresa Caputo here in Canada. I'll give you my thoughts on her. Talk soon." Thank you so much, Sandor, for commenting. Thank you for listening, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you, Sandor. And that show last week was heated, and we're still getting into and reading comments on that show. So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Sandor, for the great comments and listening to us on YouTube. And don't forget, if you want to be a Paranormal Review Radio Fan of the Week, just like us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube, Paranormal Review Radio.
Well, you know what? We do tend to view the world from our own little section that we inhabit. The earth is so full of so many different cultures, different views, different histories. Once we open up our minds and our hearts to learn about each other, we'll find that we aren't really all that different. Tonight was a refreshing and educating look at a culture that is still a mystery to many of us. We want to thank Deonna again for joining us. It was a wonderful discussion. Now, educating ourselves involves so much. Things that we experience daily may become easier to understand when we look at them from a different point of view. The Urantia book, first published by the Urantia Foundation in 1955, claims to have been presented by celestial beings as a revelation to our planet, Urantia. Urantia means Earth. Now, the writings in the Urantia book instruct us on the genesis, history, and destiny of humanity and on our relationship with God the Father. They present a unique and compelling portrayal of life and the teachings of Jesus. They open new vistas of time and eternity to the human spirit and offer new details of our ascending adventure in a friendly and carefully administered universe. Next Friday night, we will be joined by Halbert Katzen. Halbert is an attorney from Boulder, Colorado, and he writes a newsletter he calls You Be the News. Halbert will be talking to us about the Urantia book and the You Be the News project. Now, was this book really written by angels? Be here next week and prepare to take a journey through our history, our reality, and our future. It's going to be an amazing night. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of the family. Learning with you each week is such an honor. Thank you, Anthony, for another fantastic show. So, until next week, my parapeeps, live long and prosper and have a paranormal week. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Paranormal Review Radio. Paranormal Review Radio.